Good morning and welcome to this formal meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Nigel Pepper, Chairman of this committee. The Vice Chairman, Councillor Paul Skinner, is also in attendance to my right. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcasted live via the County Council's website. And with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public watching
would you
this
mind
live.
ringing me in about an hour, please? Yeah. Maybe. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.
As the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I'd like to remind you all that your comments will remain accessible online and can be reported by the media. I'd like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park and wait there. Can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent, please, for the duration of this meeting. Also, may I remind you that the hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by my Vice Chairman. When invited to speak, you should press the button on your microphone unit to make it live. Then press again when you finish your contribution. We'll now move on to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence and replacement councillors. I'll turn to you, Trina. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we do. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Mike Clark, Councillor Nicola Clark. We have Councillor Tom Ashton here as her replacement, Councillor Andrew Key, Councillor Danny and Councillor Austin. We've also had apologies from Martin Samuels, Executive Director of Adult Care and Community Wellbeing. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, and thank you. Item 2 is declarations of councillors' interests. Do members wish to declare any interest, please? No, can't see any. Thank you. Moving on, minutes of the previous meeting of the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Committee, held on the 19th of March. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting, held on the 19th of March 2024, as a correct record. The minutes can be found on pages 5 to 14 of the agenda pack. Do I have a proposer, please? So I've got Councillor Skinner, seconder. Councillor Brockway, thank you. We'll now vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? None against. Any abstentions? Okay, we've got 2 abstentions there. Got those recorded? From Councillor Ashton and Councillor Gray. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. Those minutes are agreed. Item 4, announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. Just from me, a little dicky bird informs me that this is Trina's last meeting with our committee and is taking early retirement. Should I say very early retirement, as she cannot be that age. Trina, on behalf of us all, thank you for all your help and assistance to this committee, and we wish you a long and happy retirement. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Now, from someone who is retirement age, I'd just like to say that after 7 years of being your chairman of this committee, I've decided to voluntarily stand down and let someone else have a go after this meeting. Okay, moving on. Are there any executive council announcements, please? None?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
We've got a report on today which is substantial.
Sure. None online from anyone? Okay. Are there any announcements from senior officers, please? No? Okay. We'll move on then to the agenda proper. Agenda item 5. It's the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue new crewing arrangements post-implementation review. This report is on pages 15 to 20 of the agenda pack and sets out an update on the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue new crewing arrangements and the impact during the first 3 months since the implementation on the 1st of January 2024. The actions for today are is to review and comment on the detailed report and request that Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue monitors the continued performance at Sleaford Station as part of a business as usual performance management and reports back as part of the annual performance report. The report will be presented by Mark Baxter, Chief Officer. So without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pepper. So, yeah, the report here is with the backdrop of the change that we made at Sleaford that we implemented on the 1st of January. And just as just a reminder that the main changes we did how we crewed Sleaford Station is whereas primarily we had whole-time firefighters that were there during the day and also stayed there during nighttime hours or lived in close proximity of the station in nighttime hours. We changed the crewing system so where we only have whole-time personnel offering response duties 7 days a week during the day, and then we rely on our on-call personnel to give those nighttime hours cover. That was on the backdrop of a significant amount of data research in regards to the local risks and the demand and the potential impact that it would have in regards to our response times. So we implemented in 1st of January, and what we wanted to do for the first 3 months was to review on a like-by-like basis compared to this time last year on if it had an impact on our response standards. So just for clarity, what we're talking about when we're on our response standard, it is the times that where as Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue we have control over how we can ensure that our crews get in the fire engine as quick as possible to attend those incidents. So we measured the times from when a member of the public calls 999 and we receive the call, from when our control handlers identify where the address is and then they identify the nearest station, and the station is then alerted, and then it will be the quickest time that our fire crews can get on the appliances, and then we stop the timing from the time they actually leave that fire station. And that's what we class as the response times in this report. I think the reason why that's important, and we'll focus on the impact that it happened during the nighttime hours, because a significant change we've done since this time last year is that we are relying solely on our on-call personnel to give that response standard during the night. So the table in the report just gives us some of the key data that we focused on. One of obviously the key areas was our on-call availability for that station, and really pleasing to see that over that 12-month period we have increased the establishment by 4 people on that station. That just gives us additional resilience and additional ability to ensure that that appliance is available and can respond in a timely manner. Overall, for our response times, putting the day and the nights together, we've seen our average response time at Sleaford at 3 minutes and 19 seconds, which is actually 10 seconds quicker than it was this time in last year. So that's a positive direction of travel. But once we started digging down into the important areas of the impact of the changing of the duty patterns, during the daytime period, which actually hasn't really changed in regards to how we respond, we have seen an increase in to 1 minute 27 seconds. I say an increase in positive direction of travel by 26 seconds, which is a quicker response. In the nighttime period, we have seen a slightly slower response of 13 seconds. So not significant when we're talking an average of 5 minutes and 19 seconds, but there is a 13 seconds difference. What we really wanted to understand, has there been a change in demand of the incidents that we're responding to in and around the Sleaford area? So we broke that down into regards to incidents within the station ground, and we've also broken that down between nighttime and daytime area. And the figures are pretty much broadly the same, so we're not seeing a change in demand in regards to the incidents that we're requiring to attend at Sleaford. And another area we just wanted to understand is the impact of relying solely on our on-call personnel. Has there been any significant change in the times where our appliance hasn't been available from that station? During the same period in 2023, we had one occasion when the appliance was off the run. and that would have been down to insufficient crewing levels. This time in 2024, since we've had the changes, there's been 2 occasions where the appliance has been off the run due to insufficient crewing. However, there have been other reasons why we haven't been able to be mobilised. On 2 occasions is because the appliances were already committed to other incidents, and that period coincided with what we call spay conditions. That's when we're in extremely high demand for calls position for the whole of the service, and that would have been during the flooding events. One was when we had an incident support team, so we was able to mobilise it, but it was at a restricted incident only, and we have a policy where if we do only have a crew of 3, which is below our usual minimum requirement, we restrict the type of incidents that crew can respond to. So very low risk incidents such as potentially a bin fire in the town, which is very low risk, and we know we can quickly go and resolve that incident. And there was one other occasion where actually there was the next nearest station was quicker to get to that incident, because what we utilise is quite sophisticated systems within our control, and we use a nearest asset mobilising system, and it automatically identifies where is the nearest assets should be mobilised. And on this occasion, Sleaford wasn't the nearest station. We've just done a breakdown of when incidents occur during the days of the week, just to really see if there was any trends or analysis where if we have any specific busier times, either at weekends or during the day. There isn't really any specific trends that we can point to it in that period at all. And then the final element that we wanted to understand was the impact was there going to be any personnel impact on our whole time personnel that are already on that station. We identified 3 areas that we wanted to look at, and one was in regards to there was a potential risk of a high number of personnel wanting to transfer away from Sleaford due to the fact that actually they would be losing a higher rate of remuneration for being at that station. As it's transpired, there's only 1 member of staff that submitted a transfer request, and due to these reasons, but then they withdrew that transfer request. There have been other staff that have moved from the station, but they're for other reasons such as promotion and looking at alternative roles within the organisation. We wanted to see if there's going to be a reduction in whole-time staff that were going to want to be taken up night-time on-call contracts, because that was obviously, it's a valuable resource. We've got trained personnel whole-time on the stations, and we wanted them to encourage them to take on additional on-call separate contracts. 2 members of staff have maintained their on-call duties, and 2 further members of staff are now provided on-call duties at other stations, so we are seeing a positive impact at other stations as well. And because Sleaford also hosts our urban search and rescue capability, all of our qualified urban search and rescue staff have maintained their on-call contract, so it hasn't had an impact on that capability either. And then, as I touched on earlier, we just wanted to ensure we understood if there's going to be an impact on the on-call crew. What we've clearly seen, we've had a positive impact in regards to recruitment, as we've had for additional personnel, but we've also seen a positive feedback from the on-call because they are attending more incidents, they are being involved in more response, and it has significantly improved the morale on that section at that station. So really, in summary, what we've seen, Councillor Pepper, is we haven't seen a negative impact in regards to our response model. In some areas, particularly on our on-call, we've actually seen a positive impact in regards to the recruitment and the morale on station. And actually, the whole-time personnel that are already serving on that station, they've welcomed the flexibility of the alternative duty patterns on there, which has definitely made a positive impact in regards to their home and work-life balance, to give them additional options on how they can provide the service to Lincolnshire Rescue.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Lee.
Thanks, and I genuinely do ask this in all innocence, Mark. There's a bit at the top of page 16 which talks about potential barriers crewing system following notification from the FBU of their intention to withdraw from the locally negotiated agreement. What reasons did they give? And I truly don't know anything about this. I just wondered.
Yeah, so we still have some locally agreed duty systems, but historically pretty much all of our duty systems are based on a local agreement between ourselves and the FBU, because not all of them are Grey Book compliant. I'll explain what that means. So our Grey Book are our nationally agreed terms and conditions that services adhere to. If you want to do something different from that, you have to have a locally agreed duty pattern that we've gone through for many years with local FBU, and actually we've had a really positive relationship where we've been able to be very creative and innovative in regards to our duty patterns to suit the local needs of Lincolnshire. I think it's fair to say there's been a national push from the FBU to remove locally agreed duty patterns because they do want to have consistency against the nationally agreed terms and conditions. So there was an approach by the FBU, and part of the locally agreed duty patterns is that either side are able to give a 6-month notice to withdraw. The FBU no point said we're going to say in 6 months' time we want to withdraw from this, but they did say that actually they wanted to enter in discussions of us reviewing the locally agreed duty patterns to be more in line with the national agreed duty patterns. So we've worked through that in conjunction with the FBU. We are broadly compliant with the nationally agreed duty patterns, although we do still have a few localisms that absolutely suit the needs of Lincolnshire and the communities of Lincolnshire, and that is still our focus, is making sure that we've got the duty patterns that suit Lincolnshire. They have, the FBU are absolutely involved in prompting the discussions in regards to can we do this a different way. Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corey on Teams.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank Mark Baxter for his comprehensive report on the crewing system at Sleaford, and also want to thank Councillor Lee for her question on the Lincolnshire crewing system. As we all know, we've been attending this committee for a number of years. It's actually really difficult to maintain availability across a predominantly rural fire and rescue service. So the Lincolnshire crewing system has historically been a way for us to do that. But I won't go any further than that, because the Chief Fire Officer has given his comprehensive reply to that. But I did want to take this opportunity, Chairman, to say thank you to you for your excellent chairmanship of this committee. It's been a pleasure to attend your meetings, and also to thank Katrina for her support. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. Thank you. Just a few questions here from myself, Mark, just to get a better understanding. Excuse me. The whole time staff that provide on-call evening cover at Sleaford, do the fire and rescue provide accommodation, or do they live relatively close to the station?
It's a mixed bag. We have some of them that do live near the station, so anybody who wants to give on-call duties at any of our stations, we require them to live within 5 minutes of the station, because that absolutely is an integral part in regards to our response model. So the closer they live to the station, that absolutely reduces the travel time for them getting into the station and be able to respond onto the appliances. If any of them don't live within 5 minutes of the stations, we do have accommodation pods next to the stations where they're able to stay there during the times when they're giving their on-call duties. Okay,
thank you. I just want to touch upon the minimum and maximum crewing. The normal minimum crew, I understand, is 4. Just ask, could there possibly be an element of delay in turning out on certain occasions? Say if a crew of 4 immediately became available, but could there be an element of holding off to wait until their colleagues arrive just to provide the maximum crew of, is it 5 or 6 maximum crew? So could there be an element of delay just waiting for others to turn out, or do they just immediately turn out once they got the 4?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is an absolute balance in regards to that, because The minimum crewing level, as you quite rightly stated, is 4, and I stress that is the minimum. We can ride up to 6 personnel on our appliances, so obviously the more personnel that we have on the appliances does increase the capabilities at an incident, and it increases firefighter safety. But we do know we have assurance that actually we still can operate safely and effectively with 4. As the firefighters are coming into the station, their focus is getting that appliance out as quickly as possible. We don't have a culture where people will be waiting around waiting for the 5th and 6th rider to attend. However, we've got 4 there, and that 5th rider is just getting their kit on, and they're just about to enter it. They will wait a couple of seconds just to allow them to get onto the appliance, because that does give the benefit of additional capabilities. But we won't have a culture where we'll be sitting on the appliance with a crew of 4 waiting for somebody to come. We will get mobilised to get to that incident as soon as we practically can.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll get that too, because if it's a fairly minimal incident, you might think, well, we're safe, we'll go with 4. But if it's a raging house fire that comes through, you think, oh, just wait another second and get another crew member on board. I get that, yeah, sure. I just wanted to better understand it. But also understand on certain types of incidents, so you can go with a crew of 3. For the benefit of the committee, can you just explain on what occasions you go out with a crew of 3?
Absolutely. So we've got a policy called alternative crewing arrangements, and that gives us different scenarios where we can go out with crew of 3, which are all risk assessed to ensure that we're able to do the job that we're required to do, but also it keeps our firefighters safe. So really the 2 main areas are if we've got really low level, low risk incidents, and I always give the example of a bin fire in the local village or the local town, and we only have a crew of 3 available in the nearest station, we will mobilise to that, because actually by not mobilising to it, there is a slight risk that that fire can develop, and also members of the public can put themselves in harm's reach by trying to tackle the fire themselves. So if it's a low risk incident, then we will mobilise to that incident. We also will also inform the nearest local station that has a full crew if they have been mobilised, because if it does develop, then we can get that support there required. We've also got an arrangement called Incident Support Team, and that is if we've got a large incident or a protracted ongoing incident that we just require more personnel on the incident ground, and we've got stations that have got crew of 3, then we can mobilise them to actually just support the ongoing incident. They never get mobilised as the first appliance, because we always want to make sure that we've got that minimum crew of 4, because that's our safe system of work. But we've already got resources there. An example would be if we have ongoing field fires or stack fires, which we will no doubtly be having in the summer months, and they just need more personnel to support them with their firefighting tactics, then we will mobilise with a crew of 3.
Okay, thank you. Without a recommendation from yourselves, how do management feel about these arrangements? And if another station seemingly proves to be getting fewer calls in the evenings, could the same arrangements occur at another station?
Yeah, so we're reviewing this on an annual basis, and rightly so. So we need to review this against what the evolving risks around the county are and where they are. I think it's probably the most important thing. So we will continually review where our stations are and are they crewed sufficiently to respond to their local areas. And that may mean that some other stations may have a similar mobilising duty patterns, or it may mean that we may need to enhance some duty systems in other areas. So we're continually reviewing and monitoring this because we recognise that it's not a static duty system that we need within Lincolnshire. Our risks changed in certain areas through times of year. We know predominantly on the East Coast we have more higher demand for calls than probably we do in some of the winter months, and we also have different type of incidents that we respond to. So we need to ensure that we continually have a flexible and agile duty system that we can meet those needs.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep looking around, see if there's any further questions, but I can't see any, so I'll just have one more for you. On page 18, the report refers to the engagement and consultation process that was undertaken before the changes were introduced. Has there been any further engagement with staff on how they feel the new arrangements are working?
Yes, so we've had regular contact and engagement with the local crews and also the surrounding stations, and it's been overwhelmingly positive feedback in regards to it. And I think, as I touched on briefly on my main report, it is about giving them that flexibility in regards to their duty patterns for our whole time, because we do recognise one of the barriers of our Lincolnshire crewing system is that it can be quite restrictive in regards to home work-life balance, and it can be a potential barrier in regards to us attracting and recruiting a wider, diverse establishment for our firefighters. So that they've actually recognised and appreciated that we're giving more flexible options in regards to how they support Sleaford Station.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking around. Gone. Okay, so thank you for your question, Councillor Lee, and that now concludes the discussion of this item. And thank you, Mark, for your presentation. I understand you've got to leave for another engagement. So thank you. So I'm going to propose that the committee has reviewed the report and requests that Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue monitors the continued performance at Sleaford Fire Station as part of the business as usual performance management and reports back as part of the annual performance report. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That's unanimous. We'll now move on to item 6, which is the Public Protection and Community Scrutiny Work Programme. This item is on pages 21 to 28 of the agenda pack and sets out the committee's work programme for 2024-2025. Our actions for today are that we're to review the work programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for consideration in the work programme. The report will be presented by Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer. So over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a couple of amendments to the work programme as published to report. For the 30th of July agenda, we've now added a performance of the library service contract, which will be the Year 8 review report. And on the 25th of February agenda, we now have an item on the illicit sale of tobacco, which will be coming from Trading Standards. The next few meetings are some quite heavy agendas. So, yes, June we have Coroner Service Annual Report, Volunteering in Lincolnshire, the Registration and Celebrity Services Annual Report, and then sitting as the Crime Disorder Scrutiny Committee, there'll be the the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership Annual Report, and the Lincolnshire Women and Girls Strategy Reducing Reoffending. Currently, July now has 7 items, so we'll have a look to see whether we can reduce that at all. September also now has 6 items, so we have got quite a few big agendas coming up in the next couple of meetings, but yeah, we'll have a look at those. But thank you, Chairman. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? No. So thank you for that, Tracy, and that concludes the discussion of this item. Getting on well today. I propose that we approve the existing work programme as detailed on pages 21 to 28, subject to the inclusion of any additional items, which there wasn't. So can I ask you to raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. Again, that's unanimous. We now sit as the Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee. We're now going to sit as the Crime Disorder Scrutiny Committee under Section 19 of the Police and Justice Act 2006 and move on to item 7. And item 7 is antisocial behaviour. This item can be found on pages 29 to 36 of the agenda pack and provides an update to the committee on a 2-year investment plan that's been developed to tackle and reduce antisocial behaviour in Lincolnshire. Our actions are the committee is required to review and comment on the detail of the contents of the report, endorse the report and commit their support in helping Lincolnshire County Council raise awareness to the impact of ASB throughout Lincolnshire, and also request that a follow-up report be submitted in the next year, providing updates and progress against set targets and actions. The report will be presented by Martin Parker, Assistant Director, Public Protection. We also have Lisa Merriman, ASB Coordinator, in attendance to help answer any questions. So over to you, Martin, should say.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for the opportunity to bring in the ASB paper to yourselves in the Public Protection Scrutiny Committee. So, as we all know, antisocial behaviour, has a significant impact not on both individuals but also communities throughout the entire county. The Lincolnshire County Council does have a statutory responsibility to be involved in and a participant in the reduction of antisocial behaviour. And that currently consists of a number of activities that the Lincolnshire County Council fulfil through the Community Safety Partnership in terms of the coordination and activity through the core priority group around antisocial behaviour. We also provide the commissioning services of the multi-agency case management platform to make sure that all high risk and repeat cases of antisocial behaviour are coordinated through the county. And we also support the district councils to help tackle young people through antisocial behaviour through the Pathways for Futures for Me. And we also have a universal prevention education offer within schools, also delivered through our Stay Safe partnership. So that's what we currently do. So it was felt that actually Lincolnshire County Council would like to do more and put more investment into antisocial behaviour to tackle and reduce that within the county. And what this paper kind of sets out is the three areas that will kind of tackle. I think it's important just to kind of outline the kind of current antisocial behaviour picture that there is in the county, just to give it some context and why it is important that more activity is galvanised around this within the system. So on average, between 14,000 and 14,500 ASB incidents are reported each year to Lincolnshire Police. Whilst that they are specific ASB incidents, there's obviously other areas of crime that would form into antisocial behaviour definitions, such as criminal damage, and also, which is the likes of graffiti, and also public order offences where, there is assaults taking place on the streets that does cause antisocial behaviour. So whilst there's 14,000 and 14,500 incidents recorded, actually the crimes that are recorded around antisocial behaviour are more. So it's an increasing number on that 14,500. Also, district councils record their own incidents of antisocial behaviour. So again, it just shows that whilst we have a police recorded data of between 14,000 and 14,500 a year, that number is actually in reality a lot higher. The four highest areas of antisocial behaviour complaints within the community are inconsiderate behaviour, 39%, household disputes, 16%, drunken behaviour, 9%, and vehicle nuisance, 8%. Inconsiderate behaviour is a wide-ranging catch-all in terms of what might be a group of young people within the street that are causing some sort of fear to local residents. It could be the dumping and distribution of litter. It could just be simply some things around noise. So it's a rather large catch-all, but it remained and has remained over a number of years the largest ASB complaint that there is recorded. When we look at the spread of antisocial behaviour in the county, it's clear that it's prevalent in all areas. So Lincolnshire Police categorise the county into 58 policing areas within the wards within the county. 72.5% of those wards, antisocial behaviour is the second highest recorded crime in those areas, which is a substantial amount. And in two of those areas, it's actually recorded as the highest crime type that is recorded within that area. And that's within Grantham Town East and Wainfleet and Borough Marsh. These are all, this is all data that can be obtained via the Lincolnshire Police website, and you can then look and interrogate your own kind of area of where ASB is prevalent within the county. Obviously, that was a snapshot in time that I took, but it's been fairly consistent through the years in terms of that percentage. 72.5% being the second highest recorded crime, and that's behind offences of violence and sexual assault. So it, so when you look at the likes of burglaries, robberies, theft from vehicles, antisocial behaviour is more prevalent in the county than those serious crimes. The top 5 locations where antisocial behaviour is the highest recorded are within Skegness, Lincoln City Centre, Lincoln Abbey, Stamford Town Centre and Louth Town Centre. But the top 5 locations where antisocial behaviour has the highest percentage in crimes in the last years is Gainsborough Rural South, Spalding Rural East, Skegness, Horncastle and Rugby, Market Deeping and Uffington, which again, so you kind of think of Market Deeping and Uffington as a really safe, nice, beautiful place to live, yet actually in terms of its percentage of increase in antisocial behaviour is high. So again, it just demonstrates again the prevalence of antisocial behaviour in the county. So what has worked well previously nationally that we've kind of based what it is that we want to do within the county. So taking a problem-solving approach to ensuring that all agencies are involved in the combating of antisocial behaviour. This response to antisocial behaviour has been worked with in collaboration with the District Council, antisocial behaviour leads, with children's services, with the police and with also social landlords, including also involving our own community safety team, which is primarily Lisa. So, you know, it's making sure that we take that system approach and engaging with local communities to understand the effects of antisocial behaviour and how we can work as a system to reduce and resolve those issues. Ensure that we target the places where it's most prevalent, you know, so taking that targeted approach to where antisocial behaviour is taking place, and then also targeting the people. So that's not just targeting the people that are committing the antisocial behaviour, but also targeting those that are in fear of antisocial and providing and supporting them to be more resilient and understand, you know, and reduce their fears by providing support to them as well. So the financial investment of £1 million is going to look to be split over 2 years, and that's going to be for the employment of a number of staff to target a number of specific areas. The first area is within the education setting, so it's actually having a fully dedicated Stay Safe officer who will deliver bespoke prevention programmes into schools. So I said earlier that we do a bespoke Stay Safe offering already, which all schools can sign up for. But this is very much comes back to well, what works is about that actually targeted intervention into schools. So where we have got evidence or intelligence or a request from schools to say they are struggling with or are having difficulties with antisocial behaviour of a particular type, then actually this officer will be dedicated to go into that school and spend more time in that school dealing with the and inputting around antisocial behaviour activity. The second area that we want to introduce is the antisocial behaviour interventions team, which is effectively will support local policing, district councils and social landlords with the tackling of antisocial behaviour in a preventative format. And that can be anywhere from making sure that they are out and visible on the streets to also ensuring that they have the right powers to issue warning letters all the way through to being involved in closure orders if there's the need be, and all the prevention activities that sit in between that. And then the final kind of thread is around a greater investment into the Positive Futures team, around some dedicated antisocial behaviour officers who will be visible and will be present in the communities, again working alongside policing, working alongside district councils to resolve and divert young people away from antisocial behaviour. This will all be on the bedrock of intelligence-led information in terms of where the activity needs to be, where the teams need to be, and then also balancing against that, against the impact on the communities. So it's very much a response model that is not tied down to one specific location. It's a response model that we based on evidence and impact, and also then where there might be a lot of activity within one area of the county because that's what districts and local policing are focusing on, but actually there might be another prevalent area anotherwhere in the county where there's not capacity within the system, that actually the LCC team will be able to assist and pick up some of the capacity within that area. Some of the expected outcomes that we'll be looking at measuring over the next couple of years is obviously the reduction of overall antisocial behaviour reported in those target areas where we have the activity. That increased feeling of safety within targeted communities. So at the moment we're just looking at getting a baseline of understanding with communities around their fear and a fear around antisocial behaviour. We're targeting through the Stay Safe team a survey for young people specifically in terms of referencing their fears and expectations around antisocial behaviour. And we're also just working with the comms team around a survey within County Views to have a County View survey go out in the next County News, so we can again get the views of the community in terms of their fears around antisocial behaviour. We want to ensure that we have increased advocacy and mediation resolutions. Advocacy is seen certainly by the districts as one of the sort of main prevention activities around reducing antisocial behaviour and solving problems, especially those around those that are in neighbourhood disputes. Increased number of children interacted with through the Stay Safe education, so will positively impact in more people within children's. We expect an increased number of children who have received targeted ASB support and engagement, and also increased number of intervention powers that we will be using. So this is very much a Lincolnshire County Council-led initiatives which will complement the work that is already being delivered by police, district councils and social landlords. And this will be driven through the Antisocial Behaviour Cooperation Group in response to antisocial behaviour, of which Lisa coordinates on behalf of the partners and LCC. Thank you very much, Chairman. Any questions?
Thank you, Martin. I'll now invite members to speak. And I know we've got one. Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Martin. Very interesting paper. I'm gonna rip into you a bit. Nothing nasty, but I've got some concerns about the paper because I've come away with less knowledge than I need. If I refer you to page 33 and 34 as examples, the paper talks a lot about things like delivering initiative and engaging in parks with young people and things like that. And it's pretty much through the paper, this talk about engaging and consulting with, not that word particularly, involving, but I don't know anywhere what you're actually going to do. So when you're talking about engaging children in within paid children in local parks, what do you mean? What are you going to do with them? Is it going to be pre-arranged? Are there going to be meetings? Are strangers going to walk up to children in local parks? You know, see where I'm coming from with this? So that's my first question, Chairman. Do you want to have a go at that first? Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, so when I talk about the intelligence picture around where we want to deploy our resources, so this is very much a front-facing element. So if we've got evidence and information to say there is antisocial behaviour of young people congregating in this area that is causing people fear of their activities, you know, they could be smoking drugs, they could be, drinking alcohol, that is just given that's where we would send our teams in. Now, if it's young people, we would expect the Futures for Me team to go in and engage with them and physically go up to, walk into that area, talk to and engage with those people, find out who they are, see whether they are on any of their systems already or any interventions around them, and actually, whilst both educating them in terms of their behaviours and actually creating some desistance around maybe some street drinking, etc., but also make sure that they are referred onto the right pathways in children's to make sure that they don't have any repeat behaviours. This is actually, though, got to be combined with district councils and also police officers, so it's not about them doing it alone, it's about making sure we have a combined approach. So you are right, it is about people who are in a uniformed position approaching where the antisocial behaviour is and taking action to resolve that. And that may be just as I say, it could be a warning letter to them and or their parents, all the way through to actually there's a antisocial behaviour, criminal behaviour order that's going through the course to say you've got to desist in this behaviour, you can only behave in this way, and there's a number of prevention activities that take place between that.
Thank you. May I come back,
Yeah,
Chairman?
sure.
Is it possible to have some information about the prevention activities? Because I would think the last thing that we want to do is to criminalise young people. And I know some of them, their behaviour, actually, that's the way it's going to go. But it's always good to avoid that. So if it's possible, just any example you choose, maybe after this meeting, send out an example of what a team is actually going to do. I don't mind which team, whether it's young people or older people, just give me some insight, because when it comes, there are two other things. When it comes to antisocial behaviour, what are we going to offer them instead? if that is their default position with their hoodies and all the rest of it, we've got to give them something, not just a letter. If it's a letter, most kids are going to tell us to get stuffed, frankly. So we need to offer them something to move them on from antisocial behaviour. It worries me a bit. But the other thing I wanted to ask, if that's okay, on page 35, and you've mentioned, it talks about the reduction in overall ASB reports in targeted areas. That's your expected outcome, which it would be my expected outcome as well with all this work. But on what is that expectation based? Have you actually looked at data analysis for this, or is this just an expected outcome on the basis that if we do this, then it's likely that the antisocial behaviour will decrease? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, so the whole concept of targeting areas where antisocial behaviour is most prevalent is because we've got the evidence base and the baseline to tell us where it is. So we will have an evidence base to justify, one, why we are where we are in the community. So we'll already have a baseline level of understanding. Whilst we are there doing our work, we will be doing that initial work will also be understanding the fears and the woes of the community where that antisocial behaviour is taking place. Then we can do whatever activity that looks like in terms of bolstering that, and then we will then obviously look to measure the impact both in terms of confidence and number of reports. So we'll always have an evidential baseline of an area where we are actively involved.
Okay, one more if I may. Sorry to keep picking at this, but so you've got evidence of where things are happening, that's good. But is there any evidence to show that these activities will have the expected outcome? Is there any data in existence already? Thank you.
Yeah, so those elements that I discussed on page, let me just get you back to the right reference page. My computer doesn't work as fast as yours. So where we talked about the interventions that work and activity that work, that's what the evidence base is saying. So where it's a whole system approach and we have all agencies involved, we know that type of activity works. Where we know that it's targeted at a specific location and we actually deal with the elements of not only the why is it that area may be causing antisocial behaviour, and there's three general rules in terms of problem solving triangle that you have to break to reduce antisocial behaviour or crime. So is it the environment, so the location that is giving prevalence to the antisocial behaviour? So is it the environment that's allowing antisocial behaviour to take place? Is it the victim's circumstances that is allowing the antisocial behaviour to take place? And that's not about victim blaming them, but is there certain characteristics that is enabling them to be the target of antisocial behaviour? And then there's the offender. Is the characteristics of the offender, or what is it about the offender that is allowing them to cause antisocial behaviour? If we can break any one of those three things, then antisocial behaviour is likely to be reduced. In a similar way, that's how we break crime. So that's the problem-solving triangle that we'll go through, and that's what evidence says works.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Martin, just latching on to Councillor Brockway's question and your reply regarding the expected outcomes, I see there are no targets included, so how will the performance and impact of these proposals be measured, please?
Yeah, so the headlines that I've put on number 30, page 35 are kind of the headlines, and we will put the figures into that. Once we understand what the evidence base is and where those are and where we'll be targeting, we'll be able to come back at the iterative and say, this is where we started, this is the percentage that we'd expected to have seen a drop off.
Got it, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, Martin, congratulations on this. I know how much work you put into this, and we had a discussion sort of January time, because had the money not come in, it was going to be in our alternative budget. But I do know how much time and effort you've put into this, and I think this is pretty good, actually. And I think it'll be money really, really well spent. I've made a number of points, and I often can't understand my own writing, but I do think you're right, and I think antisocial behaviour looks different in different areas. I lived in Car Home ward, and in that ward it looked like people being very drunk at 2 and 3 in the morning, jumping in wheelie bins and making a lot of noise, whereas where I live now on the Ermine, it's very different. It'll be, dare I say, low level. It doesn't feel low level to the people it impacts upon, but it's kids sitting out on the streets. They're not drinking, they're just noisy, and old people want to sit out in their gardens. I get this at my surgeries, and it's actually not on the council estate that I've had this, it's on a different bit. you know, and it is low level, but it does impact on their lives and it does upset them. But when you've got no youth provision, nowhere else for them to go, I'm not excusing it, but I understand it. I can see how it's happened. And I think that the reduction in police numbers and police officers over 14 years has fed into that. And I do think as well, you talk about carrot and stick, you can have as big and hard a stick as you like and it won't necessarily cure it. And I do actually think that finding an alternative for these kids to have something to do is important. My battery's going to die. I hope it don't die before I finish what I was going to say. I wanted to ask, who do you contact now then about ASB? Because when you, as a councillor, I can't even find a number to ring the ASB team in City Hall. You have to email and you get a response that says you'll get something back within 7 days. And I can live with that. But if you were someone living with ASB, that's pretty difficult. So you then have to go to the police, but you get told it's not their job, it's the ASB team, and you just have to wait. You talked about going into schools. I wondered if in a positive vein, councillors might be able to get involved in that. I'd love to be. I'm a face that's known in my community, and I'd love to come into one of the schools with one of your teams. And I think it can be done in a positive way. It doesn't have to be seen as we're coming in to tell you off because you're being naughty. It can be done in a different way. Now, this is the bit where I hope my battery doesn't die. So page 34 talks about outreach work. I'd love to be involved in that. Again, where I live, we've got the Children's Centre, we've got the library, we've got any number of community buildings. We've got a really proactive vicar who does loads in the community. And I'd love to join all of those people up and get this going, because we have got problems. We've got problems with kids on the street. We've got those flipping e-scooters that are everywhere, nearly taking people out. There's all sorts of different problems, which are relatively low level. I mean, there are problems with drugs, but some of that's ASB and what's happening, but a lot of it's the police, and it's looking at that. But I'd love to be part of tackling that in my community. Page 35 talks about, I've got community development, as I say. It would be great, and I think within some of the structures that we've already got in my patch, I do think that we could build on that. But I'd love to, for not just me, for different people to be involved in my patch, and I would imagine that lots of other councils, I'm sure Jackie, you maybe would as well, you know. But this is just such a positive thing, and I'm so pleased to see it. But will we be able to call you, or is it still that you've got 7 days from the City Council? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Don't call me, because that's not likely to. No, that's no. No, I think it's everyone will have their own reporting procedures. You know, so you can still go to the police in terms of aspects of antisocial behaviour, and you can still go to specific city councils once. We still want to encourage people to report. We have to make those reporting mechanisms as easy as possible and actually identify where those are, where it is high risk, and there needs to be a more a quicker response. Then we need to be agile enough to do that. It's something that we can pick up within the CPGs and say, actually, what is those reporting mechanisms, and how do we actually respond effectively to members of the public who are, as you say, for them, experiencing what may seem low level to everybody else, but is horrendous to them because it's affecting them. So we will take that away and have a look at that just to go on. Yeah.
Yeah, so as a core priority group, we've done quite a lot of work over the last few years to try and improve the customer journey when it comes to reporting antisocial behaviour. So what we have done is try to ensure district council and police websites have relatively consistent information around the different types of antisocial behaviour and who to report it to, because as you've already alluded to, the police perhaps won't deal with the noise complaint or littering. You'll have to go to the council, and there's an awful lot of confusion. And I think for victims, they pick up the phone, they're told to go to someone else, they're told to ring somebody else, and it's, you know, and they just think, well, why bother? And we certainly don't want to have that. So we have put some more information, particularly if you kind of use the Lincolnshire Police website. I think probably would be your best first port of call in terms of understanding, you know, what is my ASB problem, and then you can go through the categories, and that will tell you the best place to report that particular ASB issue. Now, a lot of the district councils and the police actually are moving more and more towards reporting online, which I appreciate isn't effective for everybody. And I think ultimately, if you're experiencing antisocial behaviour that is having a detrimental impact, and you're really struggling to get through the online sort of route, you can actually ring the council. So their customer services, as I understand from my district council ASB leads, it's usually through their customer service centre, or obviously there's 101 within Lincolnshire Police. And then obviously if there is something that's actually really detrimental happening where you've got a concern for welfare or safety, then obviously it would be 999. So, but if you are still finding that there are those barriers and people are coming to your surgeries to say, actually, I'm really still struggling to report this, then please let me know, let Martin know, and he'll let me know, and we can actually look into that for you just to ensure. Because like I say, we spent so much time kind of working on this customer journey, we want to make sure it is effective, and if it's not, then we need to relook at it and have a revisit.
If I could just come back, because it does vary. You've got people in one area where it's just kids in the street making a noise, and I suppose you could wait 7 days for that. That's not. But then we've had antisocial behaviour at Sudbrook Drive Community Centre where you've got people lobbing stones at the windows, terrifying the poor orchestra who were practising. And I had to be quite persistent, which I can be, to try and get to someone to get that sorted out, because everywhere's understaffed and all the rest of it. But so ultimately then it's either the police website or ringing customer services at City Hall. Just go through switch. But it's not a criticism of anybody, because I know everyone's doing the best with what they've got, but I just think this is a brilliant addition. I'm really pleased to see it.
And just coming back to your other points, I think it's this is one of the purposes of the paper here. Certainly the point 2 in terms of what our ask is of kind of members is actually, you know, being more visible, being more supportive, coming along with us to do stuff. So I would encourage anybody to kind of reach out to Lisa, who can coordinate that type of activity in terms of being involved.
Can I just have one more thing? So as part of this work, we really, like I say, we want to look at that community engagement. And as Martin's already mentioned, we have got a really positive opportunity to do a survey. Although I appreciate it will be a relatively small survey, but hopefully enough to try and capture those initial views of the public. So again, anything that you can do to kind of spread that message around the survey and encourage responses would very much be welcomed, because that will ultimately help feed our activity and again provide a baseline for all this activity that we're doing. Ultimately, you know, it's not just about reducing ASB, it's about improving public perception and confidence, which I know is particularly challenging.
Yeah, just to say I'll email you, but you might actually regret saying that where I live, because if you ask for feedback, I think you might get quite a lot of it, but I will email you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a number of you wishing to speak, and thank you for being patient, and I will get to you in time. But just over to Councillor Bradwell. I know she's been itching to speak for a while.
I just I just wanted to pick up with what Jackie was saying, because actually, I'm not sure, Martin, I've probably got a hearing problem, but we have got positive futures, haven't we, who are going to go in. So if there is an issue in a park, or I would say, or outside a school, we would actually send that team in, wouldn't we, to work with those young people. We are doing that now. It's been happening for quite a while, because that team's been around, I don't know, for quite a long while. But actually we're building on that team with having the extra resource, so there'll be more teams that can go around the county. I mean, I'm lucky, and lots of us are lucky where we live, I think, that we don't have antisocial behaviour. But, you know, travelling around and meeting other people actually can be very disturbing. I mean, you know, especially for older people as well, I think. So for me, I think this is a good paper, and we just need to see how it goes. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, and I'm sure Martin won't as well, and we might need to tweak things. But I think this is a start of trying to help people who are plagued with young people. And sometimes the young people don't realise what a menace they're being. You know, they just think they're out on the street, they're having a bit of a good time. And I think actually, you know, as doing this, I think for communities, they will appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Gray next, followed by Councillor Sneath.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Martin, thanks very much for your report, which is really, really good news. I represent Horncastle, and you highlighted Horncastle sadly being highest percentage in crime in the last years. So therefore, I welcome the new intervention team. That's going to be really good. But I'm keen to understand exactly what they're going to do, exactly how they'll help. We have had some issues, as has been highlighted, as I say, in the report. So I've been chairing a meeting with residents, town council, the police, social housing providers for the last 2 years, actually, in Horncastle. We do that every 6 months when it's been there's been more issues. We've done it every 3 months. And it's been very, very successful. And so I'm also keen that when I understand more about the new interventions team, will they work closely with the local elected member, like me, for instance, in Horncastle, because we've been doing some good work for a number of years and we've got engagement. Partnership working is very, very important when you're trying to tackle various types of antisocial behaviour. So if I could just understand a bit more about how this intervention team will work, that would be really useful, please.
Yeah, so firstly, absolutely, we want to work with the local people, local elected members, because I say, you know, what works is about that whole system approach to having everybody involved, you know, from voluntary sectors in terms of where we can divert whatever the antisocial behaviour is. The team's response is, it's about making sure that it's almost a lift and shift model. So if you're having a specific issue in Horncastle where antisocial behaviour is prevalent, and we understand what that is, and effectively they will join in with all the other agencies to provide additional capacity to put more time and effort into the issue to be resolved. But then also making sure that not only do we come in and assist with the antisocial behaviour problem, but also build the community resilience to make sure that it doesn't almost come back. So it's not a drop in, you know, we move people on or we change it and disperse it. It's actually trying to understand the root causes of why it's happening, why it's occurring, and trying to eradicate it completely within that area. So it's very much about our information picture, joining in with local people, with local activities, and providing more capacity to be out intervening with the individuals involved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would be very useful. So I look forward to seeing how that works. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sneath.
I've only been here 13 years and I still don't know how to...
Councillor Sneath, could you just try that once more?
I will, it's now red.
But don't touch. I said leave it. Right, okay. Right.
It's
carry
on red. Does it meant to be on red?
Yeah, carry on.
As I say, 13 years on and I'm still trying to sort out the... Anyway, so we're not resting on our laurels and we are looking in my main village, Pinchbeck, to open a youth club. A chap who runs the Cubs, actually, or Scouts, he's going to do that for us. And this is great. We're going to put some money to this, we're going to have some activities. I'd like to think this will really help, but maybe if I asked, maybe if someone came along from yours, if we started to get trouble, or even so we don't get trouble. But I wouldn't want to think you'd be wearing uniforms. So will the people who go about, I think that could give the wrong impression that, will they be sort of casually dressed if they come and visit children in various activities? I think that's quite important. We don't want to scare them, we want to encourage them, don't we?
Yeah, so this is not about. I think it comes back to Councillor Brockway's. We're not here to criminalise individuals. You know, it's about supporting them out of antisocial behaviour. There will be a uniform for the staff to wear, but if the circumstances dictate, in terms of where actually intervention would benefit from not wearing that uniform, then that's a decision for them to take in liaison with the local individuals.
Good.
We want to make sure we have the right impact. Therefore, it's not a dictatorship in terms of you will always do this and you will always. It's about balancing the circumstances to meet the needs of what it is that we're trying to resolve.
Thank you. My other point is perhaps not quite so positive. I'm slightly concerned about the on page 35 about the group intervention. I just worry that offering something like an activity week or sessions at Outward Bound centres, it looks like rewards for bad behaviour to me, and I'm just not sure. There'll be children who don't get that chance, who are well behaved, and then they'll see children who are not, or young people who taking part in ASB who are almost rewarded for what they're doing. What are your thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, I think it's been part of a national debate, actually. I think there's been a lot of commentary over the years in terms of, you know, do we reward bad behaviour? I think when we look at the interventions that take place, it's actually about exposing activities to individuals that would not ordinarily understand that those activities are available for them. You know, in terms of our sort of deprivation levels, it might be a case of those people can't do it. So it's not about you behave poorly, you get rewarded. This is actually about long-term societal intervention, and it's very, very difficult, and those decisions have to be made. So, you know, whilst nationally people say we're rewarding bad behaviour, but actually if we don't do something to intervene in families that we see have repeat upon repeat criminal activity and social behaviour will never break the cycle, and it'll be continual. So we have to do something, and something is about exposing those individuals that don't get those opportunities to see that actually something works. And we've seen this even where we've diverted young people into dance sessions in particular, has seemed to be really positive in terms of diverting them away from criminal conduct through the Positive Futures team. So we know it's something that does work, you know, and they have their ambassadors around that. And unfortunately, if the perception is the perception is that we're rewarding bad behaviour, the intention is actually about exposing young people who would not ordinarily have that opportunity to recognise there is a different way of life.
Fine. Thank you very much for that explanation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm aware I've got a couple of members on Teams wishing to speak, but next one on the list is Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Welcome the report. It's, as Jackie was saying, we don't really want to get people into the four-stage part of ASB for the sake of it, and I know that's not done anyway. The whole thing is partnership-led, but the education bit is really true, and it's something that you need to get over in schools, the value of the person's worth in society. And Councillor Bradwell's mentioned Positive Futures. In the past, the club that I'm associated with in Boston, we've worked with both with Positive Futures and also at district level when we used to have sports rounds. Now we're just coming up to the summer holidays. We used to do that very, very well. All the voluntary clubs putting on an event to keep the kids engaged, all kids, not just troublesome, all kids, and showing that there's actually, you know, a better way of doing it. The other thing I was really relieved in some respects, and the figures have shown that Boston, it doesn't sit in the ASB and hasn't done for quite a long time, but it is actually that fear. And I think by working with people, as this is down to, the key is obviously intervention and engagement, but working with people to show them a better way. So I'm very supportive of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Matthews on Teams, please.
Thank you very much. And I welcome the report, and it does clearly proactive education is the right way forward to create prevention. But I'm concerned about the thin response to reactive behaviour, or how we react to poor behaviour. So Alford doesn't feature on the top 10 of antisocial behaviours, but we have young adults driving motorbikes around on housing estates, scaring pensioners out of their wits, and the effect is across the whole state. When we've rung the police, they said, well, they'll have gone by the time we get there, so we're not coming. And we don't know who they are, so we can't do anything anyway. That behaviour is still extant. The youth clubs won't deal with it. So we heard something from the young lady who spoke, sorry, I couldn't pick up your name, but can we get a better information pack to residents to say how we deal with their behaviour? Because to a pensioner, being knocked off a pavement by a young person on a bike, 7 days response time is absolutely highlighted, is not very helpful. It'd just be good if we could know more about how we react in the instance that antisocial behaviour, the best and most effective route to get response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, that's absolutely something we can look at in terms of getting that information out. Like I say, websites are extremely helpful for a certain demographic within our community, but obviously doesn't reach everybody. So certainly it's something, even through the core priority group, as well as through perhaps the community engagement work we do through the ASB intervention team, we can ensure that residents are aware of who they can call, when and why. Again, you know, I appreciate that it is extremely difficult sometimes to get through to whichever agency you're trying to call to report a crime, even as well as antisocial behaviour. And I will stress that we don't want people to give up. We want to know, and we want to ensure that those issues are dealt with as effectively and as swiftly as possible. As Martin's already alluded to within the presentation, you know, we are pushing more and more towards this problem-solving methodology. You know, why is this problem occurring here, and what is it that we can do in partnership to resolve it? Even if that initial call is made to the district council should then be considering their policing colleagues to see what powers and tools are available that they can use then to also support that activity. Is there a requirement to gate off areas, etc.? So I will certainly take that back through the core priority group to have a look to see what information we can provide sort of paper-wise to residents within communities. Again, if the issue is particularly prevalent and you can almost know that it's going to happen on a Saturday afternoon, you know, let the local neighbourhood policing team know that that's happening, and they can hopefully try and, you know, organise patrols around that particular time. If you can make any sort of record, we don't ask that people become, you know, we don't want people to take over their lives and having to sit and wait for things to happen and record and report things. But as and when things happen, if you can make a note, make a record of when, the more information we have, the more opportunity we can to hopefully direct and target that activity at the right times.
Thank you for that response. I only have one thing to comment. There is no local neighbourhood policing team in Alford. The PCSOs have been drifted into Mablethorpe and Skegness, high demand areas. So small rural towns do not have that police support available to them. Thank you.
Yeah, part of the intention with this sort of increased capacity in terms of into the system is, so where policing and local districts have got activity taking place in what are perceived to be the hotspot areas, where does that leave the county vulnerable, and where actually might we be able to have footprint? So the Alford one is a prime example in terms of that might not get the overview, whilst we'll still work in partnership in problem solving it. Actually, because we're putting more capacity into the system, then actually some of our teams may be able to be diverted to look at those issues, whilst the hotspot areas that policing and district councils are looking at, so we're putting more of that capacity into the system. So hopefully we'll be able to pick up some more of these localised issues.
Can I just add one more thing? Also, you should have a community beat manager within your area. So even if you no longer have a PCSO presence, you will have a community beat manager that is responsible for policing that area. And again, I appreciate they will probably quite stretched, but ultimately they are there to report to engage with. And again, having this sort of information and evidence helps feed where we can then utilise the ASB intervention team.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny, also on Teams.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank your services for your services at chairing the public protection.
Thank you,
Councillor Pepper, and you will be missed. First thing I want to touch on, and I think my colleague Councillor Skinner has touched on, is Boston. I'm very glad to see that Boston is not in the top 5. The second thing is that I would like to say that the local perception of antisocial behavior is quite different, because people, they don't believe that there is a strict laws to stop people, you know, behaving badly and causing probably distress to others. My other issue is we're all aware that Haven High has stated a strike in front of the school at Marion Road. And that's due to the pupils' behavior in classes and abusive language used in the school towards teachers. I wonder if the officers are already in touch with Haven High. And the figures probably about Boston, are they the right figures to make us probably to be in the 6th position? Because some people, they don't report anything anymore because as we heard that sometimes the police didn't arrive, so therefore there is nothing registered, there is nothing recorded. Could we say that these kind of issues affect the reality in our society? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Danny. Yes, our Stay Safe teams are already engaged with Haven High. They're on their curriculum and part of the delivery in terms of Haven High, so that's not just the LCC staff, but also police staff and fire and rescue. So there's a full engagement in with Haven High. I do take the point in terms of Boston not kind of featuring in terms of the data in terms of the reports, but certainly for yourselves, the fear of antisocial behaviour, or those that aren't reporting it, they're all parts of that engagement activity that Lisa spoke about. It's about making people confident to report, making sure we get that response correct, and we have that kind of customer journey, want for a better word, absolutely spot on in terms of our response to their needs around antisocial behaviour. But I do come back to, so whilst I've put in the paper the various locations, this is not actually saying where we may be. This is a flavour for you in terms of your information about where the top 5 locations are, where those highlights. But I think what I've kind of demonstrated in that kind of the chart around the 58 wards is that we know antisocial behaviour is prevalent throughout the county, because it's 72% of those 58 different wards. It's the second highest reported crimes within those areas. And that's where we're going to take a holistic approach to what does the data tell us, where does it tell us, and where is the greatest need for us to deploy not just our LCC resources, but actually our combination with police and local districts, all of which are very positive about LCC's step into providing additional capacity into the antisocial behaviour, and making sure we do take that kind of whole system approach about where we can best utilise our resources to have the best impact on what is causing distress to our communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I can see no one else wishing to speak, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item. And thank you, Martin and Lisa. I'm going to propose that the committee endorses the report and commits its support in helping Lincolnshire County Council raise awareness of the impact of ASB throughout Lincolnshire, and that we request a follow-up report to be submitted in the next year, providing updates and progress against set targets and actions. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you, that's all agreed. We'll now move on to item 8, which is the annual review of Prevent. This item can be found on pages 37 to 44 of the agenda pack and provides a summary of Prevent activity in Lincolnshire during the course of 2023-24 and the intentions for the coming year to ensure members are cited on Prevent as a statutory duty. Our actions are to review and comment on the contents of the report, and to seek assurance on the Council's role in meeting its statutory responsibilities under the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act 2015. The report will be presented by Richard Clare, Strategic Prevent Lead, Safer Communities. We also, as you're aware, have Martin Parker, Assistant Director of Public Protection, in attendance to help answer questions. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, as you say, this summarises the activity that we've done across the county to deliver on the Prevent duty over the last 12 months. Just in summary about the national threat, we are currently on substantial, meaning an attack is likely within the UK. Locally, we have a counter-terrorism local profile, which makes it far more focused on what our particular threats are within Lincolnshire. That was refreshed in December 2023. And the 3 priorities are listed actually on the report. They are the same as the previous year. So our top priority is extreme right-wing terrorism. The second one is the prison extremism and extremists within prison facilities. And the third one is self-initiated terrorists. So self-initiated terrorists what we used to call lone wolves or lone actors a few years ago. So these are individuals that are not necessarily aligned to an organisation or directed by an organisation, but actually do it off their own bat. So they are generally radicalised at home, watching the internet, watching the news, and at some stage they then decide to take some action about a particular cause that they believe in. So they tend to act as an individual person rather than as a group. You'll note on the report that we're a bit of an outlier nationally in terms of Islamist extremism. It doesn't feature on our CTLP as a threat. We are seen as a low-risk area for that. That is quite different across the national picture and even within the East Midlands. We continue to be a low-risk area. We're classified as that by the Home Office. We're a low priority and we're a non-funded area, so all of the activity that we do in terms of LCC is funded by LCC directly, not the Home Office. But as it says, that does not mean to say there is no risk. We do actively have people within the county who we're intervening with, the police are working with, and that come through on referrals through the Prevent system. I did mention in last year's report that there was an independent review that had just taken place and been published, and that was going to result in a revised duty guidance that came out at the end of last year, the revised duty. The three main areas that it talks about is fairly similar to the previous duty, it's just the wording has been changed, and I'll explain why a couple of those words are different. So the first one is to tackle the ideological causes of terrorism. It's very much focusing back on ideology. So whereas previously Prevent did a lot of work with people with vulnerabilities, and were very good at doing that, there wasn't necessarily an ideology there that could be worked with, and that's quite necessary in order of looking at terrorism as opposed to other types of vulnerable interventions that can be done. The second one is intervening with people who are susceptible to radicalisation. That used to be called vulnerable. So what they've looked at now is that there can be people who can be radicalised and can go down the route of terrorism who aren't necessarily having any vulnerabilities with them, but they are open to that message and that they can act on that, knowing full well what they're doing. And the third bit is enabling people who have been engaged in terrorism to disengage and rehabilitate. So this is people who might perhaps been sent to prison that are being released for terror offences, or people who have been radicalised whilst in prison that we can work with. So the independent review identified 34 areas that it wanted us to prevent on nationally, to improve on. Of those 34 areas that were identified, 30 of those have now been completed nationally, and Lincolnshire is fully compliant with all those recommendations that have been done. One of the big changes fairly recently with Prevent is the governance aspect. So the activity within Prevent is managed by the Prevent Steering Group. We realised sort of during the course of last year that there was no way of escalating any issues. So if we've had any problems with partners or delivery, there was no group to go to get a more effective approach to it. So it now sits within the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership. So the process will be that Channel, the multi-agency partnership that deals and intervenes with people that are being radicalised, reports to the Prevent Steering Group. The Prevent Steering Group can now escalate issues to the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership and reports to them twice a year. We have a delivery plan. So part of the counter-terrorism local plan is to identify risks within the county and activities that we need to do. So there's two parts to that delivery plan. The first part is to make sure that we comply with the duty. So there's certain legal requirements we have. Of particular note is the venue hire policy. So that was raised last year within this report, and also you'll notice further down about the benchmark assessment, it identified that we didn't have a venue hire policy. Literally within a couple of weeks of the benchmark being done, that was actually passed by LCC management team. So we do have one now, I'm pleased to say. It's now down to me to implement that policy, but we have it in place. The plan also documents other types of areas where interventions might need to be done. So we identified that some of the referrals that were being done weren't very good in quality. It didn't give us the information or the context that we needed to identify if there was a risk. So there's been various courses being put on across the county to help people understand what it is we need in those referrals to make it a bit clearer, a bit more focused on the areas that we want to focus on. The benchmark assessment takes place every year. It took place in February this year on the 28th. This is an annual assessment by the Home Office where we're measured against the expectations of the duty and how we deliver that across the county. The scoring system has changed slightly. Last year we were scored between 1 and 5 on various aspects of the duty. This year they've just got it down to 3 categories. So we either don't meet the duty, we meet it, or we exceed it. Out of the 6 areas that were looked at, we met the duty in 3 of those and we exceeded it in the other 3. You'll see the wording there. This actually came out yesterday formally to the Chief Exec in writing about the assessment, and it says that we're doing very well in meeting the duty, and they were particularly impressed about the level of training that we do across the county to staff and to other organisations. They describe that as exceptional. I mentioned there about the venue hire policy was being raised in that assessment, but that is, like I say, is getting in place now. Within the counter-terrorism local profile, we also identify particular areas of risk and radicalisation. So one of the big ones here is online resilience. So the vast majority of people who get referred through to the Prevent team are being radicalised online. They're either downloading material, they're being sent material, they're going on websites they shouldn't be, and it's quite easy to do that. I wouldn't tell you how to do it because you don't need to know. But young people particularly are very adept at finding this material online. They often download it without realising what they're doing. They don't realise the illegal nature of some of the stuff they're doing. So we've been looking particularly at how we intervene with certain groups there. One of the groups we've been looking at is people with neurodiverse conditions. Because what we've realised is there's actually quite a number of people being referred through with various vulnerabilities linked to neurodiversity. And we've then got this course that we've set up with Home Office funding for a particular group of people. It's important to say that what we're not saying is that people with autism are more likely to become terrorists. What we are saying is that they are more susceptible to being radicalised. Because of the nature of some of their traits within that condition, they get very absorbed into certain themes, they do lots of research, they might amass lots of information about a particular topic. If that's the wrong topic, they can actually very much come to our attention because of the nature of stuff that they might be downloading or looking at. So this course has been set up, it's led by Lincolnshire, but it's across the whole of the East Midlands in 4 different local authorities. And it's about educating carers and parents of those particular young people on what to look out for and how to intervene. So part of it is about the radicalisation process, but actually a big chunk of it is about identifying whether that young person is being radicalised or not. And what we don't want people to do is be referred through to Prevent when it's not actually the appropriate thing for them to be done. We're about halfway through delivery of those courses, and in total we're hoping to deliver it to about 360 parents and carers across the East Midlands area. In terms of training, there's been a couple of changes this last year. The first one is we now have a Prevent training strategy across all partners. What we realised was that different partners were doing Prevent training in different ways. They did it to different levels, they did it to different standards and refreshment periods. So what we've done is we've now standardised that and set a minimum standard across all partners within Lincolnshire that says they have to do a certain level of training and refresh it every 3 to 5 years. LCC has its own training policy now, which is fully aligned with that one across the whole of the partnership. So we have 2 levels of training that we deliver. We have a universal offer, which goes out to all secondary schools across the county. We also train all our staff with Prevent awareness, but we also have a targeted offer. So this allows us to look at particular groups or schools or locations where we think there's a particular risk. So that's identified through information we get through counter-terrorism policing or through the council itself. And we will then send a training package over to that group of people, and we do face-to-face predominantly with certain groups and voluntary groups and community groups as well. The training offer has changed quite substantially over the last couple of years. We previously trained anyone and everyone. What we actually realised though was that we weren't necessarily targeting the right people in the right way by doing that. So we've used some of the information that we've gathered across the Prevent statistics for the last couple of years, and we now identify particular areas of threat and risk, and we focus on delivering training specifically to those instead. You'll see there's a list of all the different types of training we do, which involves e-learning and face-to-face, and the numbers are there in the chart for comparison over the last 3 years. The big one that jumps out is the face-to-face training with schools. You'll see there's been quite a significant drop. There are some very specific reasons for that. The first one is for a while, during the course of last year, we didn't actually have a trainer, so we were limited in what we could deliver. That's now in place, albeit they're part-time as opposed to a full-time person. But what we actually do is, because we're focusing on particular age groups, so we only deliver predominantly to secondary schools, there's far fewer people that we can actually train in terms of teachers and people within those environments. That number will increase a little bit over the next coming 12 months, but that's the reason why there's a big discrepancy between the overall figures. The other thing we have, which is delivered via the Enable website, is through the Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership. So you'll see there's actually quite a substantial number of people do the e-learning through that website. The education sector on there has gone up slightly. Again, part of that is in terms of how we've directed schools to do the training. So when we've turned around to some of the junior schools and infant schools and said, we won't deliver face-to-face, we haven't just left them to it. We've directed them to the Enables website so they can get the teachers trained on the e-learning that's available on there. And you'll see there's various other groups of people that have been using that facility in order to increase their awareness of Prevent. There's a new category that's been introduced within the Prevent duty, which is reducing permissive environments. There's two particular areas for this. One is the venue hire policy, which again we're now compliant with. But there's other things like making sure that our IT systems don't allow people to go on terrorist websites, download illegal material. We did have a test of that, and going back a few months, we did actually find out that we can go on some terror websites using LCC computers. You'd be pleased to know we can't anymore. That's been blocked. It was something we didn't even realise we could do. So it's things like that, simple things like computers within libraries. Can people go and download illegal material within district libraries, within museums, or other accessible areas? We've sent a check out to the districts to have a look at that and see whether they have those things in place that we need to just prevent people from being able to do it. Then you'll see there's a briefing on Channel. As I described, Channel is the multi-agency intervention panel, so it's made up of a number of different partners where we look at the reasons why people are perhaps being radicalised towards terrorism, and we put things in place to prevent that from happening. We did a dip sample of various cases within March, because what we realised is that where there's a number of referrals come through, the police initially vet those referrals to see whether they need to progress to Channel and whether they are a national security risk. Quite a large number of those don't go through that process and go any further. So what we wanted to make sure was that we agreed with the rationale that was being used to look into those and not come before the Channel panel. So we dip sampled a number of those between Prevent staff, LCC staff and counter-terrorism policing. And actually it was very reassuring what we found. We found that there's an awful lot of work being done by the counter-terrorism police officers with a referral, even if it did progress any further to Channel. They were doing safeguarding measures, sending referrals through to other agencies, and all of that was documented within those. So they weren't just written off as they're not of interest to Prevent, because quite often we were finding there were very legitimate vulnerabilities within people being referred, and we can't just turn around and say that's not our problem. So things were put in place to make sure that they were safeguarded where it was needed. In terms of national developments, I have put down on here the definition of extremism, because I figured someone was probably going to ask about it, because it was very public when it came out. The thing to note on that is we previously had a definition of extremism which was linked to British values, which came out many, many years ago. When they removed that from Prevent duty, they didn't actually replace it with anything. So there is currently no definition of extremism within Prevent. This is a government definition of extremism. And that's the difference we perhaps need to note with it, is this is for government, central government departments. It's not a definition that's expected to be used by Prevent itself. It doesn't change any of the thresholds in terms of what we refer, and it's not necessarily intended to be used by local authorities or district authorities. But we do treat it as a guidance as to what we now expect to be seen as extremist behaviour. So in conclusion, we currently meet all the duty requirements we're expected to do legally. We've got a very good Prevent partnership. We have very good attendance within the Prevent steering group. And as they say, our training offer is exceptional. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll now open up to questions and comments. Firstly, over to you, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I note from the report that the training for councillors is every 4 years. Now, with the threat and risk forever changing within the UK, I would suggest that maybe updates are on how to report, where to raise your concerns might be a little bit, let's say, it's not met within 4 years. I think threats change every 2-3 months. So without trying to be alarmist, we need to be addressing that balance. Thank you.
Yeah, the training standard we've set across the partnership is every 5 years and every 3 years for people working face-to-face with children and young people. Elected members will fall within that, but that is a minimum standard. We do appreciate that people in different roles will need a higher level of awareness and a higher level of training. There are training packages that come out from central government, specifically for councillors. There was one recently about your own safety. So when you're going to your out in your constituencies and you're talking to people and you're in your offices, is being aware about where there may be a threat there to your personal safety. It's very much come to the forefront at the moment about councillors being approached on the streets, being threatened whilst doing leaflet drops. It's quite a sensitive time, I appreciate, for elected members and those standing for elections as well. There are packages that we forward through. We have our portfolio holder here, who I think will agree that I send bits and pieces to you, don't I, in terms of training that's available. There is actually a 2-day prevent course that councillors can go on. I know it's a big ask, but it's a residential course that is available to give you very much in-depth training. And a lot of briefings come out as well from the local government associations, send various newsletters and briefings out. So there is material out there, but I'll take on board that perhaps it's maybe not filtering through some of the briefings that come out from local government if you haven't received anything. But I'm quite happy to arrange a members' briefing. We were intending to do it earlier in the year, but then because of the May elections, that was put on hold. So I have got my counter-terrorism policing colleagues ready to come in and deliver some briefing for you within the next couple of months, if we can manage to fit that within your agendas.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sneath.
Thank you. Just a little information, if possible, about the venue hire policy. Not something I know anything about. Thank you.
Yeah, the venue hire policy is intended to prevent LCC specifically, because it's our policy, from hiring out any of our buildings to people who might be extremists or be radicalising influences. So what we've experienced across the country is some extreme groups might hire out a hall or a part of a town city hall, something like that, and then hold a meeting. When they finally arrive to that meeting, it could be that they come with flags with swastikas on, they could have extreme ideas, extreme speakers. We don't want to provide that facility to people. So what we have is a process now in place whereby we can vet people who want to hire our venues. It's very simple vetting. It's basically you do Google checks and you can contact myself in the Home Office if you have any concerns. But at least it's an intervention step so we don't get taken advantage of by extreme groups. It's been taken on board by several districts already, and I sent it out to the other districts the other week when it was passed by our Chief Officer team to say, here it is, this is a blueprint for how to prevent your venues from being taken advantage of. And it's a speaker policy as well. So it's not only the hiring of rooms, it's also introducing people into our venues who perhaps want to do a talk about a certain topic. We need to make sure that's an appropriate person to be doing that talk and then not passing out radicalising messages.
Thank you. Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks very much for this very interesting report. Could I just ask you about the channel agency approach, please, that you've got on page 42? That seems to be quite a serious, well, the kind of approach that you would take with somebody who is quite considered to be quite a serious threat. It's quite a big thing, isn't it? You have to have a panel, you have to have it raised, you have to get their permission for them to participate. So I can see that it's taken very seriously. But what I wondered, if somebody agrees to go through that programme and then is eventually seen as perhaps no longer a threat or the case is closed, how does that impact on their life going forward once they've taken part in that programme? Thank you.
It's very much a supportive mechanism. So, as you'll know, it's not about criminalising people. If people commit offences within the terror world, they wouldn't come on channel. There's other ways that they will be dealt with separate to it. And it's very much consensual because generally people who get offered channel have something that they need help with. So whatever those vulnerabilities or susceptibilities might be, there's usually a route that we can help them out with. So that could be mental health support, it could be housing, it could be education. They see that as a route into that particular support mechanism. So generally people are very much cooperative with channel. It's not seen as us doing something to them. We generally work with them and use whichever partner is best involved with them. Hopefully, you know, a lot of them tend to have interventions already in place, so they could have a social worker or a early help worker, and we simply tie it together to give them some additional support. When they come out of channel, you quite rightly say, it's usually because that threat is diminished. I mean, we're not talking about people who are planning attacks generally with Prevent. We are talking about people who are in the process of doing research, downloading things like manuals, thinking about it, perhaps engaging with groups online through chat rooms and things like that, that are on that stepping stone towards being radicalised, towards doing terror attacks. If they're planning something, that sits within a totally separate thing about pursue, and police will be dealing with that totally separately. So it's a fairly low level, but it's a very serious process to go through. When they come off channel, hopefully they won't be radicalised any further, but we do reviews with them. So every 3-6 months we will then do a basic check on them to see how they're going. They'll get another visit by the police officer to see how their life is going on, just to sort of test whether there's any sort of other radicalisation factors in place. They can come back on channel. So a year later, if we find that they're going back down the same route, we can have a further referral, go back to them, and we can bring them back on board to give them that additional support. So we don't just let them go once they've finished with channel, we do monitor them afterwards, and in case they need any further support.
Okay, thank you. Richard, on page 37, the report highlights the 3 priorities identified for Lincolnshire in 2024. How have these priorities been identified, and how will the prevent activity be adjusted to address these priorities?
Yeah, the priorities are very much a partnership effort.
Yeah.
CTLP that we talked about is developed not just by counter-terrorism policing. We had a partnership meeting September, October last year, where we had about 20, 25 different partners came together from the district, from other organisations, from council, from health, from education, to discuss what they thought some of the threats were within the county. So it wasn't just something being given to them, they were part of that development of that package. And when that package came out in December, we had another meeting with those partners again to talk through it, to make sure that we actually were looking at the right areas, the right risks. In terms of where they're identified from, they will come from the prevent referrals we have. So we'll know the types of people being referred through to prevent, the types of ideologies they have. It also falls in part of the national threat picture. So certainly the top of the extreme right wing and the self-initiated are also national threats. As I say, the only one that really we don't fit in nationally is the Islamist extremism, because that's not the types of people we have within Lincolnshire, the types of communities. It's not the type of threat we have deliberately, targeting Lincolnshire population. So that's why that doesn't really sit on our threat level.
Okay, thank you. And the other question, I think you may have partly answered, but I'll just go through it. In relation to the prevent training provided to secondary and SEN schools, as mentioned on page 40 of the report, is this aimed at just the staff or the pupils as well?
We just train staff.
If it's just the staff, then what preventive work is undertaken with young people to raise their awareness of the dangers of extremism and terrorism? And if it does include young people, is the training tailored to the age and abilities of the pupils, please?
Okay, sorry. It's directed purely at the teachers or other staff within school, but it's not just the teachers. So we do things like caretakers, maintenance staff, because it's just as likely they'll be talking to a kid in the playground and realise there might be something wrong as perhaps one of the teachers. We don't train pupils directly. It's not the type of topic that we would actually speak to young people about in terms of prevent. What we do have is a link to the Stay Safe partnership. So within Stay Safe, where they're talking about domestic abuse, about respect for other people, there is a brief mention of prevent within that package, but it's tailored in a totally different way. So we're teaching teachers how to identify people that are perhaps being radicalised, the signs to look for and how to intervene and how to refer. What the Stay Safe partnership is doing is dealing with young people and their attitudes towards other people, and understanding that people can be different and have respect for them, and how to sort of socialise normally with other people and not have those extreme views. So it's dealt with in a quite a different way.
Sure, thank you. I can see no further questions, so thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion of this item, and thank you, Richard. I'm going to propose that the committee has reviewed the report and has been assured on the Council's role in statutory responsibilities under the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act 2015. Can members please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you, that's all agreed. That now concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you everyone for your attendance. You may now leave the council chamber.
Before we do, Chairman, can we thank you for the fine work you've done on this committee? You've been an extremely inclusive chair. You've made sure that everybody has had the chance to speak and air their views, and I'm, for one, I'm very happy that I've had the chance to have you as chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I say from our side the same too? It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you. And Katrina, thank you.
You'll have me tearing in a minute. Okay. Thank you all.